Well, the colder weather does not seem to scare away those in love from spending. The National Retail Federation predicts that consumer spending for Valentine's Day in the United States will reach nearly $26 billion. Sally Patterson has more from New York.
Love was in the air this week, and love is big business in the United States. Every Valentine's Day, consumers fork out billions of dollars on chocolate, flowers, gifts, and meals.
I spent around $150 for the presents, flowers, gifts, everything.
I got a perfume for my fiance. I love shopping on a holiday. Make it special for the lady. It's their day, and you just want to show your appreciation for your love. I'm just grateful for her, and yes, I will shop on Valentine's Day and get her the nicest gift I can possibly think of.
Yeah, I feel very beloved. I know he always does giving flowers every other week or every week. But it's more special that we can spend time, and he'll cook for me today for the first time. I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, it's a big thing. I'm hoping not to mess it up.
Retail helps drive the US economy. It contributes nearly $4 trillion to annual GDP and supports 1 in 4 jobs, according to the National Retail Federation.
Consumers spend in 2 buckets. It's discretionary and non-discretionary, or the stuff that you have to spend money on and the stuff that you want to spend money on. And Valentine's Day is a big discretionary spend. You get a good gauge here of how the consumer is thinking about themselves and their financial position by how much they're spending.
The National Retail Federation says overall more than half of consumers celebrate February 14th through cards, gifts, and restaurant reservations.
How much cash people splashed on Valentine's Day varied widely across different age groups. Asked in the lead up to the big day what they expected to spend, 18 to 24-year-olds said $97 each. 35 to 44-year-olds predicted a spend of $137, and that's more than double what over 65s plan to pay at $61.
But it's not all roses. New figures show consumer spending declined 0.8% last month, much more than expected. And nearly half of Americans say inflation impacted their Valentine's Day plans this year, according to personal finance company Wallet Hub. Nonetheless, data shows consumers aren't really tightening their belts.
Consumer expenditures are a huge portion of our economy, about 2/3. So the whole economy really depends on consumers not cutting back. So far, they haven't been cutting back, even as the Federal Reserve keeps raising interest rates. That raises the question, how are they funding that? How are consumers funding that? Pretty straightforward. They're running up credit card bills.
And while money can't buy love, almost a third of people say getting into debt for Valentine's Day is worth it to show how much they care. Sally Patterson, CGTN, New York.
Well, to talk more about retail sales and the rise of theft and just about everything else that's affecting them, we're now joined by Luca Signorelli. He is the director at AlixPartners. Luca, thanks for coming on our program. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean, for having me.
A lot to get to. I want to talk about your reaction first to the latest retail information. And what does it say about the state of the industry? Because it appears the government is kind of nonplussed about this. Everybody spent big leading up to Christmas, and of course, there's going to be a cooling off period in January. That's their take.
Yeah, and I think what we see is that's very much expected across the industry. You have this big kind of spending leading up to the holidays, really right through the Christmas period, and then in that first week after in January, it's really quiet. It's one of the slowest months of the year across the board, and then we'll start to see things kind of pick up right through the Valentine's Day holiday that we just saw, and then back into spring as we get into some of the more routine seasonal holidays.
Well, look, we talked about the good, Valentine's Day spending, the bad, the January spending. Now, how about the ugly? Talk about all the theft that stores are having to deal with. We've all seen these mobs run in and run out, arms filled with bags, clothes, whatever they can get their hands on. And a lot of people are very frustrated across the U.S. Why can't something be done about this? But what does it do to retailers?
You know, it's a really difficult issue. And unfortunately, it's one that is as old as the industry itself. There has always been theft as long as there has been retail. And so what we're seeing is certainly a small increase in the actual theft that we're seeing across the entire country. And we're seeing some really horrific attacks in some local stores that are, of course, being spread by social media. And unfortunately, I think it's giving people an impression that this is a much greater issue than it is. And when you look at the numbers, we do see a small uptick since 2019, 2020, but it is not quite this widespread issue across the entire country. It's very localized.
Talk about that. When you say it's localized, are there certain cities that are being hit a lot harder than others? Because here in DC, there's a high entity across the street, and it has all the big names, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and they have a security guard out front, and they limit the number of people that go inside. That wasn't the case a year ago.
Yep, you're bringing up two very critical intersections of what's happening here. So you're seeing a lot of the major U.S. cities, particularly in the urban cores, the densest part of the cities, where this is actually spiking, and you're seeing some of these more, graphic attacks that you're seeing spread through social media. At the same time, we're seeing a lot of this focus on the barbells of the goods segment. So you have the luxury goods, the Louis Vuitton example you were just talking about. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of attention there in trying to get access to those goods. And then on the other side, where you see deodorant and toothbrushes that are locked up behind glass cases.
But often that's because people who are homeless just want to get their hands on those to brush their teeth and have some kind of way for sanitation. So that's a tough call. But which cities do you think are the biggest targets? Can you break it down like that? And when they see something go out on social media that's that's really so eye-catching, it really does feed into that, oh my gosh, this is going on everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing, and especially in these big urban cores, and it is, you could probably guess the major cities. It's the, all the largest 10 in the United States.
Got it.
Where you have a lot of these areas that you haven't seen all the daytime employment come back. And so as companies continue to grapple with their work from home policies and how often they're bringing employees back, that creates a little bit of a vacuum in some of these, urban centers where the retailers are being forced to respond. And that's where you talked about the security guard. You're seeing things that are, more locked up, and you're seeing a lot more of these security controls that unfortunately come at the expense of the customer experience and kind of create a trade-off about people feeling friendly and willing to shop in those stores.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let's talk about online concerns. Online returns, that has become such a big issue because the initial sales figures looked amazing in December. Then people started returning so many items. What kind of effect is that having on e-commerce?
It's a really difficult challenge, especially if you're a retailer who started with a stores-only presence, and then you start venturing out online. And what we see really across the industry, profitability declines the more online sales take up as the portion of the whole. And the reason for that is it actually costs more money to process a return than it does to ship an item out.
Wow.
And so what we found during the pandemic is that people were ordering 3, 4, 5 sizes of a T-shirt, didn't know which one was going to fit, and then they were going to send 4 back. And that creates 2 problems. One, they have to pay the extra cost to return condition it's coming back in, and you don't know if you can resell it again. And so retailers are having to adapt and find new ways to either change the return policies without alienating customers, or finding ways to process things more efficiently and reduce that cost.
I think that's a pretty good point, because retailers will really do everything they can to make the consumer feel comfortable and make it easier on them. But there is an outlook for legislation, states such as California, New York, Florida. And what do the companies think of this? What do the states think of this? And how is this going to play out?
Yeah, it's a difficult challenge, and I wish there was a very easy answer. I think there hopefully will be some level of a change that we can see that will benefit everyone. But at the same time, what I will tell you, working with retailers, they are continuously in contact with law enforcement for everything from preventing incidents as well as prosecution after the fact. And if the rules are going to change, the retailers will continue to adapt. So some of the things that you're seeing in the stores today, they're going to continue to make those trade-offs with the experiences, and whether they need to have more armed guards, less armed guards, whether they need to limit people or not. Those are the types of discussions they're going to have on an ongoing basis, and they'll adapt to whatever the legislation ends up being.